spoken to a few people who said that there were 2 channels that we used to have for public TV, and now it's limited to 1, and I wondered why that is happening.
I'm going to guess about that, but it's probably the same reason he gave for the other channels. We used to have the Scranton channels, and I know that's an issue here. I like the Scranton channels as well as
44
everybody
is what
else.
she's talking about.
Pardon?
44 W.
Yeah, okay. But there's, until New York State
Federal.
legislation changes, they have contracts with other municipalities, and then they can't cross the line. They can't cross the state line. So they can't, because they have these contractual obligations to them that they won't go within a certain distance or whatever.
I don't know, I just think, we're a lot of people here, and I agree that
Well,
you
I know,
should
but
maybe.
they can't because of the federal law. It's now on.
So then go this way and find something, I don't know, go stay in New York State, if you're saying they can't, you're saying they can't cross the state line with it?
If they have they can't go with, a channel in Pennsylvania because they have, that channel already has other contractual agreements. So they can't bring it here.
So some of them are network agreements too with the
Yeah.
networks that they only provide one.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but there is legislation on the floor, but it's gotta be passed. So until that's passed,
Well, I guess that's
We
my
can't get
other
those channels
point.
back.
My other point is it's a 15-year contract, and no matter what, cable is technology, and technology changes as we blink. And I don't know why we should enter into a contract for 15 years for a technological contract. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think they're under the impression that you're just gonna improve it. If you were like, well, can we do better? I would be
I think
surprised.
so, too.
If you got them on the front page of the newspaper saying, because they won't extend to a road that has 19 homes instead of 20 or 17 instead of 20, I think at that point, maybe, there aren't many towns like this outside of, 2 hours outside the city that don't have legitimate broadband
Well, you see now,
access.
but cable and broadband, I was trying to look that up. They are a provider. That was my original thing, was maybe we'll negotiate a 3% and give us much more broadband in this area or something like that. But Carol points out to me that cable and broadband are not necessarily the same
It's the
thing.
same wire.
That's what I think.
No, it's the same wire. You can look at on a road if it has that big wire underneath the
No,
telephone.
Chuck, I get mine through the telephone line on DSL.
Well, it's
Broadband.
DSL, that's not cable.
Yeah, it's broadband. It's broadband
No,
under the
it's DSL,
consideration.
Mark. It's not broadband.
No, it's broadband. It is considered
It is
broadband.
broadband, but it's not cable.
It's not
That's
cable.
it. It's not cable.
Talking
That's all.
apples, oranges.
It's a different animal altogether.
Right.
I mean, if you guys said no to this agreement, what would happen?
I know that.
I don't know either. I don't know the answer.
Kevin?
I just thought, the term, the 15 years, this seems absurd, given, just to
Did you
reiterate,
speak up?
the term 15 years seems absurd, given the changing nature of technology. Also, Time Warner is involved in this huge merger with Comcast, making them something gigantic, and they're gonna be a different entity from,
Correct.
I would even say that, make it 3 years, because you don't even know who you're gonna be dealing with,
Why couldn't you
That
ask?
was one of my issues with it.
an even more behemoth corporation.
Actually, they say you can audit only every 3 years, so 3 years might be the right number.
But yeah, 15 years is absurd. We may.
Who knows what's gonna be in
Like a
15 years?
dial-up modem.
Or even asking them to commit to running it down one road a year, extending 10 homes a year that they normally, just getting something from them other than, I don't know what the franchise agreement actually obligates them to do, but asking something in return seems fair enough.
I don't think we should be such pushovers.
You might set a trend, you might find it catches on like fire in these little towns that are struggling for broadband access.
Anybody else, Bernie?
You know how many customers they have in Tusten? There's other, I have the dish myself. There's other means of getting television, and the dish seems to be pretty good. And like you said, 15 years seems like a long time to tie yourself up. I think you should, and like Kevin said, it looks like Comcast might even buy
Right.
Time Warner out. What happens then?
Then we'll probably be sitting down at the table with Comcast.
I mean,
It's in
Yeah,
the
franchise.
contract.
if you find out how many customers the Dish has and how many customers Time Warner has, you know, you have a bargaining chip. There is other ways. From my knowledge of them, they used to raise the rates like crazy every year. Oh, it's only $3, it's only $4, all of a
Right.
sudden, it's $100 bill. So I think you should look at the contract a little more thoroughly.
Garrett?
From my understanding, the phone companies want to not use the copper lines anymore. And they go to a digital service, and this requires broadband. And if we don't have the adequate broadband for our area, they want to get rid of these phone lines, what do we do then? We don't have phone.
Who's they Gary?
The phone companies throughout the
Yeah.
country, they want to get rid of the old landlines.
Well, they made that clear at that seminar.
They don't want to maintain them anymore.
Yeah.
They're moving into the digital age, I guess.
Right.
you
Well,
know.
Frontier just bought all of Verizon's landlines,
Yeah.
so they must want to be in it to some extent.
Yeah.
But Verizon didn't want to.
Right.
They've been going digital,
Yeah.
Verizon.
Well, that's another problem, everybody going digital, and we're not gonna have anything, any landline. I mean, you take Sandy, that was the only communication this hamlet had. This entire town, that was the only thing that we had, that we could rely on. Cell phone service was spotty,
But actually, it's,
radios, nothing.
it's even more reliable than landline if you think about it, because your cell phones and your satellites don't rely on hard wires and hardware.
Until you get
power.
having like something like an
Run on
EMP.
electricity.
I went to,
Yep.
electromagnetic pulse. They can happen naturally and they can be like an act of terrorism. They, the Association of Towns, the one year when I went down to the city, they had actually a day and a half seminar on that. And, it was really kinda shocking, what it can cause and what it can disrupt. And if
But
something
you
like
look
that
at one
happens-
storm and how many trees are down, and you lose your telephone service, and you lose your
Ned,
cable
very
service.
few times have I ever lost my phone service.
Yeah, the
Phone
landline.
service has been the one thing that always existed through all these things.
But they're moving away from that. Like in my new house, I don't have any phone lines.
Oh, I know, I
And I
actually
don't have any cable.
switched.
Everything's through the satellite.
After Sandy,
and air.
because of the problem, I had to keep running back and forth up the hill to get cell service, to actually have any communication here.
Right.
Bob Grimm had hooked the town up here so that I could have some communication here. He gave me a temporary line because of the emergency, or I would have had nothing.
I think that's probably even more, I mean, you guys have raised some really good or some really
Yeah.
good points, is, you know, go to a 3-year contract or something along those
Yeah, I
lines,
would like
because
a
everything's
shorter
changing
contract.
so much, so
Yeah.
Well, there
People
was
should
a part-
maintain one hardwired line for emergencies.
They talk about the emergency.
When all the lines went down, we had the phone, we could call New York State Electric and Gas. We could call, at least we could call we kept one hardwired phone.
Right. Yep.
You put enough down, my
I think,
Any other
I think the
comments on
major, the major focus really has to be on enhancing and improving the broadband in the area. Cable's almost irrelevant, because frankly, what's happening now, as we've seen with broadband and things like Netflix, more and more programming gets delivered to you through the internet. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, the length of the contract, cable may be completely irrelevant.
Exactly.
You're going to get all of your programming, your information, your data, everything over the internet. And that copper wire that's now run into your house to bring you channels, whether they're from Scranton or New York City or Binghamton, whatever, won't even exist. The fight that they're waging now with Comcast and Time Warner and Verizon, everybody, is who's going to deliver your broadband. And that's really the key focus here. So going 15 years out on a contract like this, you know,
Yeah, no,
frankly, cable may not even really be a player anymore in the whole information media world.
Just very quickly, I don't know how much this is tied up with broadband and just a television franchise type thing, but when Jane and others, Norm, went to that conference about the broadband coming in, Congressman Gibson was very vocal about trying to help small communities like Tusten that would not be benefiting from this broadband because there weren't enough people here to pick it up. if you run into a problem and you want a bargaining chip, maybe contacting his office might help you, get a little more leverage and oomph behind some of these, questions that you're asking.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll close the public hearing on the franchising.